Welcome to the Close with One Untold Sales Stories with CEOs that share the things that they didn't know when they were young and how they transformed and went through challenges and tragedy to become someone that when someone meets them, they go, wow, I trust this person. I like this person. Today, Tyler talks about overcoming childhood obesity and a speech impediment to a point where now today he helps people get on stage and become their truth and their purpose today. And oh my gosh, these stories are wild. Grab yourself a bowl of popcorn, a cup of coffee, plug in. It's incredible to hear where he's going to take us today. Thank you for joining.
A lot of people don't talk about, but it's one of those things that obesity is one thing, but if you're a child and you really don't understand the impacts of obesity on you as a human being, your metabolism at a young age, then I feel for those kids because I was one of those kids, and so, uh, but it's one of those things that a lot of people don't talk about. You've heard of overweight or obesity, but childhood childhood obesity is a different kind of concept of like these they're still kids, so they really don't even understand, So, but yeah, I think that's what I would share is whatever organization they feel called to give, but something along those lines. It's something that is personal to my story, but it's something that a lot of people aren't aware of either. So,
I remember you sharing that story when I met you in Miami for that incredible mastermind experience. And I think we had just gotten ready to go on the yacht, or it was right at the end. And I asked you, what is your legacy and purpose? And you said, well, Mark, that's easy. Here's where I started off. Where is that place where you started off? Let's go back to that point of maybe the transformations and some of the traumas that you went through that maybe you're even thankful for that have made you who you are today and how you can really support others in this crazy journey called life. But it's not really life, it's something else, it's bigger than that. But let's start off with your story.
sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. The story of Tyler Cerny of who I am today. I mean, if I go back to when I was younger, one of the things I always tell people is when I was playing make believe in the backyard with my brother, literally as a 4-year-old little boy, I was presenting and preaching to imaginary audiences. And so I was always called to speak. I knew I always wanted to speak. I didn't know what form or shape that would look like. Maybe it was just having conversations with the people around me. Another thing to add with that too is when I got to the collegiate level, there was this event that people were networking, and it was a speed networking event where you would talk to someone for 60 to 90 seconds and then you would jump to the next table. And it was really like a job fair opportunity for college students to build relationships with business owners in the area. And I remember even my friends that we were all going towards it and walking to the event, and my friends were so nervous and so anxious. We're like, we get to speak. We're like, Tyler, like, aren't you nervous? And I was like, dude, we get to speak to strangers and like just have fun, like talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember too that all the people around me would get nervous about that, but for me, I always loved connecting and speaking with people. Uh-huh. And then another instance growing up too is I was overweight and I had a speech impediment as well. So, people would ask me what my name was. And for me, I couldn't say my R's. So people would ask me, what's your name? I would say Tyler Sony. Like I couldn't say my R's. I would struggle with that pronunciation. And so I struggled to speak, I sounded different. And when I would speak to other kids, I get picked on a little bit too. And it's like, I always wanted to just quote unquote be normal when I was a little kid. But through that process, I I had a speech coach when I started like third grade. They for for additional support for kids who needed help speaking. And so even at a young age, Like I had this desire to speak. I had a speech impediment, which gave me the opportunity to literally work one on one because not a lot of kids had a speech impediment. I think there was like one other kid, and they kind of came in and out. Where I worked with this woman, I'll never forget it, Mrs. Fetterman, when I was in third grade, and she would help me pronunciate words. And so I was practicing my speaking abilities even as a third grader. And fast forward to just wanting to connect and speak with people, and then that translated into, the final thing I will say with this too is, um, I was always quote unquote like the black sheep of my family. I was always different and unique from my family. And one of the things that I was always great at was finding those commonalities and connecting with individuals. And I tell people is I was able to connect with my family, like my parents and my brother, where we were all on completely different wavelengths. But that had also prepared me and prepped me where it's like I was able to find commonalities with them where I feel like I can find commonalities with anyone, right? And so all of these things that I first saw that was maybe that like a disadvantage, or it was one of the greatest gifts of my life because communication has been at a root, this theme and thread of my life, translating into business, sales, speaking on stage, and just honestly communication with myself when I journal and get clear on what my goals are and what those thoughts I have within inside my head and the goals that I want to achieve in my current situation. It really comes back down to communication. What's that conversation that you're having with yourself, and that process of achieving goals and the process of the self-talk that you have with yourself to the communication that we have with others, whether it's in a sales conversation, whether it's in a relationship building conversation, both personally and professionally. And then ultimately, communicating on stage, which was kind of the last piece to kind of bring this up the pace here is I saw a statistic that the number one fear that people have is public speaking. And number two, it's death. And I saw that and I was like, people would rather be in the casket than give the eulogy at a funeral. And I just remember, as a human being, I think everyone has that point where they've spoken in front of it and they get a little nervous. That's a nerd. That's very normal. But I just remember I was like, you know what? If I can overcome this, I can do anything. And so I really just leaned into that. And again, I always love to communicate. I always love to speak. And so I really just invested in honing in that craft. One of the guys I listened to on YouTube all the time was Jim Rohn, the mentor to Tony Robbins. I really just loved how, I don't want to do an impersonation of his voice, but he has an iconic voice. He would have a lot of fun. He'd crack jokes, and he would also educate you. It was entertaining. And I just remember listening to that and him being an older gentleman. I'm like, man, like, I could do this for the rest of my life too. If I get really good at even when I'm young, even when I become 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, I could still do this on stage, And so that was also something that drew me into speaking. And through that, through repetition, learning from other people, and investing in the Toastmasters and different coaches and different things. And I had a lot of great experiences with that. We can dive a little bit more into that too. But one of the things that one of the companies that I worked with was one of the largest personal development companies in the world. And they actually had this event called, I forget the name of the night that they had, but it was a specific workshop for speakers. And people invested $7,500 into this. So it was a premium event to just become a better speaker. And one of the nights, it was called Crazy Night. And basically, they wanted you to sing a song on stage and wear a crazy outfit. Some people just wore an outfit. Some people literally wore their birthday suit. And this was, I mean, I can't even make this stuff up, And I'm kind of like behind the scenes helping facilitate this event. So I'm really not sure what's going on, but apparently this event has been going on for a while. And so they're like, Tyler, do you want to be part of it? And I said, okay, sure. So I sang the Eminem song, Lose Yourself, because I was like, I'm not really good at memorizing lyrics, but I was like, I know that song just from playing sports. But I went up there in my boxers, singing the song in front of all these strangers. It was this environment where people had, it was a very safe environment where people were expressing themselves, making themselves look, silly and stuff like that. But that was really a huge breaking point because the conversation or the conversation or the thought of like, think of everyone in their boxers when you're on stage to help you produce it. Well, I was actually the guy on boxers on stage. So once I did that, that obliterated all sense of fear or anything around that. And so I've just really never looked back since. And everything that we do now is just like speaking, whether it's on Zoom calls like this, sharing your story, delivering it on a TEDx stage, delivering a keynote, communicating your message, your branding, your story through your website and through your socials, creating content online. It all comes back down to communication. It's something that I've always been passionate about. I've had a lot of unique experiences with it, and that's what we help other people do in a professional standpoint, whether it's delivering more effective keynotes, communicating their brand more effectively online, or even just having more fruitful conversations, both personally and professionally.
You reminded me of something, Tyler, that I put back into like the locked Pandora's box of my childhood. And I remember in third grade, a teacher flagged me and said, Mark, can you go down the hallway and there's a special teacher that's going to speak with you? I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And I get into the classroom and there's the teacher and one other person, a girl named April. And they basically said, Mark, people are having a hard time understanding you. So we're going to go through this exercise. It's basically just speech improvement so that you and April can go through these processes and just kind of connect with people better. And my parents had said to me when I was born, they're like, hey, you talk a lot. So maybe you're going to be an attorney or maybe you're going to be something else. We have no idea. And my dad gave me these Brian Tracy tapes. I didn't get a chance to listen to Jim Rohn, but there were just other people along the way. And then you mentioned Tony Robbins. Anytime I had a chance to listen to him, I think I got Awaken the Giant Within on an actual cassette tape. And I played it over and over again. And I remember him talking about what it was like to be homeless, dirt poor, living out of his car and being in a challenging living environment with his family. And he walked into a bank. No one was giving him any money. And he said, I'm going to figure out which person here is, and he came up with this word. It's not a real word, I don't think. He said, who's persuasible? Who can I talk to that's going to believe in me and give me money so I can create this business for transforming other people? And that's like what you talked about, going from the struggle of a speech impediment and childhood obesity to all of a sudden feeling like I can get on stage with people, I can connect with them and not exactly persuade them to follow exactly what you said, but having them connect with you and go, I want that too. And today's conversation is the untold stories. And you've already shared multiple that are very human and vulnerable. How do you view having conversations with people that have never met you? And I remember when I met you, you said, I'm going to teach people how to do TEDx talks. I'm going to do it on my own. And once I master that, I'll teach other people. And I believe you've done this in a way that millions of people have listened to your story. So walk me through that piece.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, right? And that's something that I always look at is like how can we build a relationship with essentially anyone, right? And especially the people that have the similar values. How can we build those relationships? And a couple of stories that I can share too, to kind of share the untold stories, to talk about the things that I typically don't talk about. One of the things that I found early on in my career, and one of the books I picked up was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, right? It's like the name, knowing someone's name, just the sweetest sounding thing to someone's ear is knowing their name. And it can be so simple, but it's like if you reinforce Mark, or say the name of the individual that you're speaking to. And just simply by remembering their name, you're already in an elite level of like, this guy's different, and there's a connection. There's something different with this guy that, if you're networking at a lot of people, it's like, hi, nice to meet you. He's kind of like, it's just very transactional, where it's like, how can we really build that deep relationship? And another thing I found too is I would go to a lot of these networking events, and I remember even it was one of my first networking events I ever went to. I'll never forget it. It was in San Diego. It's called the Thrive Conference. It was an amazing conference. There was like Jack Canfield, the guy of Chicken Soup for the Soul. He was the keynote speaker. And I remember I had a final that week. I was actually in college. I had a final that week. And I told my teacher, I was like, hey, there's all these speakers at this event. Can I go? Can I take the final early? And he was a really cool professor. I told him the lineup, and he was a big Lewis Howes fan, and he was also there too. And so, like, you go for it. I remember I was a broke college student. I was like, for some reason, I'm being drawn to this event. Like, I just want to be in the room, and got access to my brother's credit card. I was like, dude, can you like spot me, and I'll like find a way to pay you back. And he, booked the flight. Um, you know, and all these things. And I remember just getting there and networking with people. And this was like a real life situation of me finally getting into a business entrepreneurial setting of just networking with strangers that I've never met before. And I'm the only person, I didn't go with any, right? And I'm like here on my own to meet people. So it's like, for me, I found just putting myself in situations like that too, where a lot of people would be like, no, I need to have everything figured out. I would never put myself in a situation like that. I want to go with someone where, like, for me, I wanted to put myself in a situation where I was forced to grow. And then also, too, when I met people, I would just be curious and ask questions to learn more about them. Because even today, when I meet people, it's very rare do you meet people that are genuinely curious to learn more about you, right? That are genuinely asking questions more about you, where it's like, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, like genuinely wanting to get to know more about you and your story. And if you ask people questions, I can't even tell you how many times this happened. I've asked people questions, and when they tell me all about their story and all about their life, then I ask them more questions. And then next thing you know, 15, 20, 30 minutes is gone by, where the talking that I've done is very minimal. And they're like, you know what, Tyler? I really like you. There's something different about you. Why? Because people love talking about themselves. They love sharing. I'm actually the opposite. It's different if we're in a podcast setting because we're here to serve people. But I don't like talking that much when it's a one-on-one conversation. I generally want to learn about the other person and seeing how I can serve them and how I can help them. And I know you're the same way, Mark. But when it comes to developing the relationship, it's really asking great questions. So then that comes down to, the Socratic method, your ability to ask quality questions. And you have this, people have heard this all the time, or, if a parent asks their kid, how's their school going? How was your day? Fine. Well, did you learn anything? No. Anything new? No. It's like these questions that lead to yes or no answers or one word responses. In reality, you want to lead with open-ended questions. If you ask your kid, how was your day? Well, it was fine. What about your day was fine? And then now they have to start digging. Well, I went to this class and I didn't want to do there. And it was, or they serve chicken nuggets when I hate chicken nuggets, or whatever the case. Oh, you don't like chicken nuggets. Like, now I can start to work with something. And that's really what the conversation starts with, asking great questions, and specifically with the sales process too. Like, if you want to have that conversation with a prospect, are you asking the right questions to open up the conversation where they feel comfortable to open up with you? Because once you have that, and then you combine it with the mindset of like, how can I genuinely serve you? How can I genuinely help you in your current situation of what you're working on? A very powerful question that I like to ask that can give me an immediate snapshot of whether I can help an individual or not is, what is your main focus for the next 12 to 18? based on how they answer that question, I can immediately know where I can take the conversation. Because some people, they're like, I don't know, that's a great question. And so then they give me this long-winded answer of like, well, then that shows me that they really don't know what they want. And so the conversation we're going to have is help them get clarity on what that looks like. If it's very clear with what they want and what they know they're moving towards, now it starts to reveal itself. It's like, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. What are we doing to make that a reality so we can hit that goal within the next 12 days? Right. And then that opens up a whole conversation. Hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Do you feel confident that you can do it? Or do you feel like you need additional support to hit that? And now we're kind of bridging the gap. And same thing with developing a relationship is like asking great questions, allowing them to create a space where they feel comfortable to open up and staying genuinely curious about what they say and actually listening, right? There's another great book called Emotional Intelligence and like 2.0, I think it's called. Really great book. And a big piece of that is listening. And most people, they may hear it, but it's like you people have like an agenda of what they want to say when you're speaking with someone, right? And that's where that can stand in the way of listening. If it's like, hey, like on a sales conversation or a prospect specifically, if I kind of have a script, it's like you say whatever, but no matter what you say, and then I'm going to ask this next question. Where, if you look at some of the best podcasters or the David Letterman show, they go with the conversation because based on what that individual said, I listened to what they said. And based on what they said, I'm now going to say this. That's a really active and that's a skill set, listening, because now it's forcing you to think on your feet. And that's improv, and that's another great way that I learned this too. I actually had a coach that he would tell me, give me a topic, and he's like, go up on stage and talk for 2 minutes. Just I tell you about, let's say astronauts, 60 seconds. What can you say about astronauts? You know what I mean? And why is that important? And just random topics, right? And so that also developing that muscle of just thinking on your feet is also really good. And being fluid and going with the conversation. And if you can do that, they're going to reciprocate that, right? Well, they're going to be like, well, tell me a little bit more about you, right? And then you're going to have a dynamic conversation. And just by implementing some of those principles, they're going to immediately say, like, you know what? Something's different about you. I really like you. Can we continue the conversation? And then another thing I like to do is I like to take at these live events, if you are meeting a lot of people, I do like to, take a photo and connect, or with social media days, it's so easy to connect a face to the name. But making sure that I have some sort of photo or their account information where I can then look them up, see their face, and do the recognition, because so you can remember who it is that you're speaking to. But nowadays, it's like it's evolved where at first it was like, I want to make 100 connections. Now, I remember going to that person, I want to make 100 connections. I want to meet as many people as humanly possible. I just want to keep pushing the envelope. Where now it's like, if I make 1, 2, 3 solid connections at a live event, that's a huge win for me. Like, I don't need to have hundreds of people. I don't even need to know hundreds of people. I'm more than happy to meet a handful of high quality individuals, develop a high quality relationship with them, and one that's meaningful, that we have similar values. And that's the last piece I will say is understanding your values and understanding your non-negotiables of what you stand for. Because if you can communicate that clearly within yourself, that's going to change the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you act, which then is going to attract certain individuals as well. Because there's certain people that I'll walk into a room and I'll have conversations with where it just so happens to be that we just kind of repel each other. And that's okay. Where at first I was like, I want everyone to like it. But in business and in marketing, if you really get clear on your non-negotiable, right? Like, I know you're married, Mark, and it's like there's certain conversations you've had with your wife that these are some non-negotiable, and you have to be okay with walking away, like when you're in that dating stage of like, if you don't support that, that's okay, but maybe this will work out as a long-term relationship type of thing. And so getting clear on what those values are for you and getting clear with what type of relationships you do want to develop with people and what that even looks like for you is also going to be super important to developing quality relationships. Because if my goal is to meet 100 people and kind of go widespread and kind of be shallow with it, then that's the result I'm going to get. Versus if I'm looking at, out of all these people in this room, and specifically a networking standpoint, which one can I really resonate with? And what are my values? And based off maybe I heard someone say on stage or maybe conversations that we've had already, who do I really want to invest time into to want to get to learn more about? Because that will help you develop those relationships. But stay curious, remember their names, have fun, smile at people, be nice, and just find ways to serve people. And that's really been my approach. And uh, if you do that, you, the right people are going to come into your life, and they're going to see that, and then they're going to reciprocate that as well.
Live events and being in the room with someone is incredible. And I had that situation where I was at an event similar to what you said about, I think it was San Diego. This one was in Denver. And they said, okay, speed dating, speed networking. There's 300 people, line up these two tables. You have 3 minutes. Each person talks. And oh my gosh, I was like, this is nuts. What am I going to do that will create real meaningful connections? And the first person I sat in front of, his name was James. And I looked at him and I asked one question. And he's like, whoa, I've never heard that before. And he answered this question. And as he answered it, I realized that there was a connection between the two of us from a values and alignment perspective. He then shared that he had to shut down a business and almost was losing his business because he trusted someone to create a lead gen system and a website and all this stuff. I said, wait, what happened? He's like, I spent 150,000 with this organization and I even knew them and he trusted them. And after 2 years, I said, what happened? He's like, I got burned. So what did you get? He's like, I got zero from that situation. I was like, man, that's an incredible sign that there wasn't that alignment and they weren't focused on you first. Rather, they had the equation the other way. And I love how you said, I can't work with everyone, nor should I. There's some people where there's just not a natural alignment. And I started to work with them. I said, you know what? You've been burned. So if you want to work with me, it's basically 3 months at no risk. And if you like the experience, it continues. And if you don't, I never met you. Tear up the invoices. He's like, this is insane. Why would you do that? And I said, your purpose is more important than mine. I believe in what you're doing. I believe in you. A year later, his transformation that he wanted happened. He hadn't taken a vacation in 7 years. And I assigned him homework of taking a vacation. He wasn't able to give his employees raises or vacations. And through that work, he's like, Mark, I'm going to now force them to take a raise and give them a vacation. I was like, that's the transformation that you wanted 2 years ago. And you have it because of being in a position of wanting more and being coachable. Not everyone is. And I'm sure you've seen some people who are like, there's a yes, but it's not a yes right now. And you reminded me of this book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And I think there's a co-author, but Dan Sullivan is one of them. And the way he talked about sales was remarkable. You begin a call and a conversation, and there's this empty jar. And think of it like a piggy bank. And the more you listen to the other person, dividends go into this jar, this bowl. And the more those rise, they trust you more. And once the bank is filled, they're like, wow, you're all about me. You've been listening to me and asking great questions. I kind of feel like I should ask the next question, which is in their head, they hear, can you help me? And that's when I wouldn't call it neuro linguistic programming, but I would just call it human to human connection, where they can tell that the person they're talking to you or they're talking to can genuinely help, and they get them. It's not an empathy thing, but it's a trust thing. What's been your perspective on that? Because you help people do incredible things on stage and in life. It's kind of like where they're at.
Right. Yeah, that is a great question. One of the things that we did with Tony Robbins, and he would promote when he would speak on stage, he would do this thing called a strategy session.
Hmm.
Schedule your free strategy session, where those were essentially a sales call, where it's like get clear on where the client is currently at, where the client wants to go, establish that gap, and then make the recommendation on whatever that looks like. Whether it was an online program or a live event or whatever. There's tons of different services to provide, but really getting clear on that, and really getting clear on once I know where you are, where you want to go, and what's preventing you from getting there, I have a good sense to then genuinely help you. To answer your question, it's those questions will then give me the information to make a diagnosis. And the best way I look at it is that doctor frame of like when you go into a doctor, and maybe you've had this both good and bad, where something is hurting on you, like you have a problem. Well, what is a doctor going to do? A doctor is going to ask you a series of questions to understand your current situation, right? Because if I don't even know your current situation, it's going to be very hard for me to prescribe. And I mean, there are some doctors out there. Hey, they ask you one question. Hey, you need this pill, or it's like that's not. You're not going to have a lot of trust with that. And there's a lot of salespeople are like that too, where it's like you're really clear on where they're at, and to see if you can even help, right? Because that was one of the things that I always gravitated towards early on in my career, where it was like if I can't personally help you, who can I connect you with, or what can I do, or who can I connect you with in my network to help push you in the right direction to help solve your problem if I can't help solve it directly. And like what you were saying with that individual, with the guy that got burned, like you were very relationship oriented with them, right? It's like, hey, if it doesn't work out in 3 months, you rip up the invoice. That's the opposite of being transactional. Transactional is like, hey, pay this fee. If you don't do this, then I'm not going to work with you. Where it's like, no, like you're in it for the long term. You want to develop the relationship. And if, it's not about the money, it is about developing a long term relationship. And if I can't deliver for you, then don't worry about it, right? It's like, then act like this never happened because, again, I'm in it for the long term. And so, having that long-term approach, asking the right questions is going to reveal their current situation and going to get clear on what direction they were going into. Because like I mentioned before, if they don't know what their goals are or what they want to achieve, like these strategy sessions, it was like, I did over 1,000 of these strategy sessions with these individuals, with people from all walks of life. And it was very emotionally draining because I'm like a therapist, right? They're sharing with me everything that they've gone through and like why they do what they do. Because then at that point, it's also getting clear with why do they have the perspective that they have on life. It's like, oh, you want to make $1 million a year. Okay, great. Why? Right? Well, I think it would be nice. Well, what exactly like it's so it's then digging deeper on these surface level answers. And that's another part of the process of getting clear on whether we can help people in developing relationships, is that most people they don't take the time to go deep on why they're going after the things that they're going, right? Because maybe it was just like, hey, my dad has always wanted me to become a millionaire. That was one of his dreams, and so I'm doing it. Right? Oh, so it sounds like you really want to make your dad proud. Well, do you feel like you're making your dad proud today? Like it's like having these conversations of like getting emotionally tapping into the emotion of why they're doing what they're doing. And most of the time, a lot of people they even haven't done that in a while, or they maybe haven't done it ever. And so if you're able to ask those emotionally involved questions, and it's not just being okay with a surface level answer, but genuinely going deep, you're going to learn a lot about that individual, right? They're going to really open up to you. And again, once you get it to that place, like you were saying, now you have this jar filled with rapport, trust, connection. Now I can genuinely prescribe a solution for you, right? Now I'm in a position to be like, okay, based off everything that you're telling me and based off of your current situation, where you want to go and the things that are preventing you from achieving that, this is what we need to do. And I like to recap. Does that sound pretty accurate? Like just do a recap. And once they say yes, now it's like they feel understood, right? Because the first part is understanding the individual where they're coming and really challenging those beliefs and challenging why they think the way that they do. Because specifically in the live event business, it's always funny because these speakers would pitch and present on stage, right? And some individuals I would call and say, "Hey, how was the event?" It was like that was part of the sales process to follow up with these individuals because some of them they're like, "Oh, I loved it, changed my life." You know, Tony made this offer, I took advantage of it. It was awesome, and it was just a very pleasant experience. Next person on the list, we call. How was it? Oh, the total pitch fest. I absolutely hated, right? And then it's like we really have to deconstruct that belief system of like, I just had a conversation. They're at the same event, same location, same speakers. Everything was the same. The only thing that was different was the person in the chair, right? And we as human beings, we want to make the best decisions with the information that we have. And we're going to pull off from the information and the knowledge that we currently have and based off of past experiences that we have. So right now, this person that has had a negative experience, they have had some sort of probably a negative experience with live events of being pitched at. And so, but I would say something like, you know what, I'm sorry that you felt like it was a pitch fest, but I talked to a lot of people and they viewed it as an opportunity to grow their business and change their life dramatically. You didn't feel that way, right? And so then we would dive deeper. And then really what it would come down to is they felt like they weren't understood. Because if you ask the questions, you can truly understand their belief systems of why they think the way that they think. Then it's like, I totally understand. I would feel the same way. I would feel uncomfortable. I would feel a little bit frustrated as well if I had the same life experiences as you. And through that process of really just trying to understand someone's perspective of where they're coming from and taking the time to do that, it's going to go a long way. And the last thing I will say this to even bring this up to a real life example is I like to play a lot of pickup basketball. And so if I go on the court with someone and a play happens and someone gets really offended, right? They just start screaming, "That's not your ball, this is our ball, it's a foul," or whatever. They start arguing. For me, I take a step back and it's like, okay, if a play like that happens to me, I'm not going to really respond. But this has charged up this individual. So then it's like, what is this person going through outside the court that they're now bringing on the court, right? I'm not going to just jump to the conclusion and just dive into this combative verbal argument with the player. My initial theme is like, there's a reason why he's responding this way. There's a reason why they're acting this way. And so there's probably an underlying cause for that. And I want to stay curious and I want to take the time to truly understand their situation before I can even prescribe a solution or before I even give my 2 cents on what I would recommend to that individual. So it's always having that perspective as well as like, getting really clear on what that looks like. And if I say $1,000 or $100,000 or $1,000,000, if I say that to someone, like let's say $100,000, I share that with someone, someone may be, everyone out, if you share that with 10 people, you're going to get 10 different responses. Some people may say that's a lot of money. Some people may say that that's not a lot of money. And so, again, that's going to be based off their belief systems and their perspectives on life. And the more I can understand where these beliefs came from and what perspectives and beliefs that they have and what core values that they have as an individual, that's going to help me get really clear on what they value and how they make decisions. And so that's how I'm going to also tailor the conversation. And so specifically when I'm speaking on stage, getting clear with who the audience is, what do they value, and really honing in on that. Because, and you see this all the time with cars and vehicles. Like, hey, if you're a family member and you have 3 kids and you have a priority that's safety, you're going to start hitting on that value. Like a minivan, if you're looking to go fast and turn heads with a minivan, that's not your mark. You know what I mean? But if you want someone where the whole family can come along, right? And you actually have more than 2 seats, and you can literally fit 6 kids back there, and you can have literally a family reunion no matter where you go. Like, that's what I'm hitting on. So it's getting clear on the person that you're connecting with, what do they value? And then specifically on like a communication standpoint in a business setting, getting clear with what do they value, and then tailoring the solution to really make sure that we satisfy those needs and our alignment with values as well.
Speaking of alignment, where do you feel you're aligned in terms of a legacy or a purpose that for people that are plugging in today would go, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that was an issue. Or maybe I would volunteer time as part of that cause, or even money, or I connect with that in some way. What would you say that legacy or purpose is for you?
That's a great question, Mark, because one of the things that changed my life is tithing. The immediate 10% of what I make, you find a cause that resonates with you. And so I would say whoever's listening to this, number one, how much money have they given away? Because me giving away money and tithing has absolutely changed my life, because I was when I first started off in business, I was close fisted. Like the money I made, that is my hard earned money. I'm not giving it away. Um, so I would, number one, challenge whoever listening to this to consider finding a cause that fills them up so much that they want to be a part of it and give it to them. And whatever that looks like for them. And so number one, find what that looks like for them, because we're here for a short period of time on this earth. And it's not about the money or the titles that we have. It's about the amount of impact that we can make while we're here on this earth. And so I would say first get clear on what that legacy would look like. But for me, you know, there's a lot of different organizations that I like to contribute to, like specifically the local church. Definitely want to contribute to the local church, or the people that I get my cup filled up with spiritually. Like the people that fill you up spiritually, that's how they make their money, is like you feeding back to them. And one of my mentors said, if you have a spiritual coach that feeds into you, um, you should feed back into them, right? And so, but I would say definitely your local church, support them if you specifically go and you're getting a lot of value from them. But a cause that's true and dear to my heart, and we talked about this as well, is any organization that supports child obesity. Because I struggled with child obesity, and it was because my family, they were working a lot. They were always out and about. So it was always like, let's get some fast food, or, eat processed food. And it wasn't any malicious harm. It was just like, hey, let's feed the kid. And, I was a big kid, and I played a lot of sports. So I ate a lot of food as well. So, but one of those things though, too, is I had a lot of buddies that were their families were super strict on what they could eat. So they always loved coming over to my house because it was like, pantry is wide open here. Gushers, cereal, all the sugary food, all the stuff that's really bad for you. It's like, yeah, we had it. And so, but child obesity, it's one thing if you're overweight. Again, it's okay. You don't have to be strict on a kid if it's like 10 pounds. But if a kid becomes obese, 30, 40, 50 pounds over, that's an issue, right? Like we don't want to be living in any type of extreme. And childhood obesity is one of those things that a lot of people don't talk about, but it really affect a kid mentally, physically, and it's really educating kids, getting them out and active, and ultimately helping them understand that the food that they are putting in their mouth is going to impact them long term. And again, like I was able to overcome it and be fine with it. But it's one of those things where some kids don't, right? And they can have physical effects. Like they can get diabetes at a young age. They can have messed up metabolisms and gut issues that they carry on for the rest of their life. They can't a lot of these things, they could have eating disorders that carry on into their adulthood. A lot of these things are developed at a young age. And so a lot of these organizations that I've found, and there's a bunch of them out there, they invest in the education of having a healthy relationship with food, right? It's okay to, you know, especially if you're a little kid and, you're going to be losing the teeth anyway. It's like, okay, have some candy, it's okay. But it's having that healthy relationship of understanding of like, if you're going to eat sweets, you don't eat too much, right? Because you're going to get sick. And again, once or twice is fine in periods of that. But once it starts to become a habit and it starts to start showing on the body and the kid is morbidly obese, then that's an issue. And kids at a young age, they're not really thinking about the issues later on in life. So I would say one of the things that I have always loved is investing in the future generations, both, health, wealth, love, and happiness. If you can invest in the future generation to help them become more healthier, wealthier, and just develop stronger relationships, that's really what I've committed my legacy towards, is helping that next generation. Childhood obesity is one thing. Helping the future generations get connected more with spiritually, and ultimately to how to create purpose-driven businesses and how to find their purpose. And, for me, that's the ultimate wealth, is like getting clear on why you're here on this earth. Mark Twain, one of my favorite quotes, the two most powerful, most important days of my life was the day I was born and the day I found out why I was born, right? And that's really what I love that quote, because if I can help you identify that, now you're gonna move, you're gonna tap dance out of bed. You're gonna look at life with excitement. There's gonna be this fire that's lit within you. And then now it's like, what are the logistics? How can we turn this into a business? How can you actually make money from this and live out your purpose every single day? And once you have that, like, everything else will start to fall into place. But those are the things that are my legacy, and those are things that people can start contributing towards, that invest in the future generations. But that's something that that's part of my legacy, and that I always love to invest in, and put focus on energy, resources, all of the above into.
Wow. Tyler, thank you for sharing that legacy and purpose for you. It connects in so many ways, where you talked about tithing, where you talked about legacy and purpose and getting to know where you are, and then helping find a way to get there. I love that Mark Twain quote. Thank you so much for being on here with us today.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate everything you're doing, man. And I look forward to continue the conversation offline and just continue to keep inspiring people, Mark. And I look forward to talking to you soon, man.